If you are a woman, you need to know what most doctors never tell you. If you felt tired, no matter how much you sleep, experienced miscarriages, hair loss, sudden weight gain, or felt invisible to the medical system. If you've ever been told your labs are normal while your body is begging for answers, Elle's story of healing can be your story.
Today on The Rest Factor, we're joined by Elle Russ. Elle's story is all about transformation. After being dismissed by doctors, Elle became her own health advocate, healed herself, and went on to write the Paleo Thyroid Solution, followed by Confident as and created her ultimate Thyroid and Confidence Courses. We'll dive into her journey of reinvention, her insights on sleep, hormones, and performance, and how confidence itself can become one of the most powerful tools for recovery and growth. Elle, welcome to the show.
That was a better edited bio than I wrote myself. I might need to get that one from you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here because, as you know, and I've told you, and we'll talk about it, but literally there's just two things that in my life, like devices, inanimate objects that I have cried out of joy and gratitude for. One is my far infrared sauna. When I first got that, it was like, oh, and the other is the Chilipad. And I've had two of them. I had the first iteration and now I have the new one. And I tell you what, we've talked about it when you have something that you're so passionate about. And so that's also why I'm here. I'm a huge fan and of course would love to help your audience with any of the subjects that I have expertise in.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for that. And that's why I wanted to have you on our podcast, because I'm really, the more you read, the more you hear, issues with thyroid dysfunction, imbalance are just more and more prevalent. And so having your authority, having your expertise is just an honor for us. So Elle, let's start with your road from diagnosis to authority. You've said that you struggled for years with thyroid issues, being misdiagnosed and dismissed. Walk me through the turning point when you decided to take control and how that shaped your philosophy on protocols, testing, and self-advocacy.
So yes, I am 52 years old. And when I was 30, I started to have issues and they came in the form of gynecological issues like, periods all the time. And it will often manifest itself gynecologically for women. So you really need to take note. That would also be infertility and miscarriages. So I was bleeding all the time and, that's not how it's supposed to work. And so I kept going to the doctor and all they kept doing was putting me on the birth control pill. Again, let's slap the Band-Aid on the symptom of the problem they're exuding without saying, why would a healthy 30-year-old with no gynecological issues in her family or her life suddenly be bleeding every 2 weeks? But no one asked that question. And I was young and dumb and I thought the doctors knew everything. And I didn't know better. And at the time there were zero podcasts. There was no Instagram or Facebook or anywhere to really go look for this. So there was, though, a free Yahoo group led by a fellow thyroid author that I always mention. She's sort of the OG. Her name is Janie Bowthorpe, and she wrote a book called Stop the Thyroid Madness. Before she had the book, though, she had this free Yahoo group where her and other patients who had struggled with this and sort of knew more about it were helping other patients like me. And so the turning point was I went to over 24 endocrinologists and doctors. No one tested me right. No one did everything right. I learned from these women what to get tested for. I paid an exorbitant amount of money to go to a Beverly Hills hormone specialist who had been like on the back of a Suzanne Summers book or something. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I have a hormone. Like, I don't know what's going on. Went to him, and here's the thing. They took the right test. And then when I saw the test, I knew that I didn't have a hormonal problem and imbalance. I knew that all of my problems were from thyroid. The problem was as though then I was left in the dust to sort of treat myself. So here are the mistakes that are made. Most of the time, doctors are so uninformed and steeped in 1973 outdated protocols that they're taking very limited tests. They're not even testing correctly. But then you might have someone who tests correctly, but they're not assessing correctly. Then you might have someone who tests correctly, assesses correctly, but they're not treating correctly. And so in every way down this line, I kept coming up against problems. And so what I had to do, and unfortunately, a lot of people all over the world have to do this too, and it's very scary. I had to dose myself. I had to buy my thyroid hormones over the internet from other countries, this, that, and the other. And I literally had to doctor myself back to health with thyroid hormones in my apartment. And I did it. And then when I did it, I was like, well, hold on a minute. I was like, that really makes me mad because why did they not all know this? I went to all these doctors. I spent thousands of dollars that never got me anywhere. I was misdiagnosed and all of the stuff. So once it was over, I thought, I'm kind of like, oh, done with this whole thyroid thing. Thank God this is over. And then I got hit again a second time in a decade with another thyroid issue that can happen when thyroid hormones don't convert properly, called the reverse T3 problem. And so here I am again, a second time in a decade, and I'm left in the dust. And then this is a problem that really they don't understand. So now I'm looking at one in a million.
You picked that up because of the research that you had done, right? No one actually told you that. You just knew there's another problem.
Well, I'll give credit to Janie Bowthorpe because I had known her from so long ago and she had since written the book and everything. I reached out and I said, I'm having a problem here. And she goes, you know what? There's a guy in England who just kind of figured this out. We're talking about it. It's brand new. He just wrote a book on reverse T3. His name is Paul Robinson. Those are the only two authors I recommend, by the way, thyroid authors. So I got his book immediately, and it turns out, I got tested, and it turns out I had a reverse T3 problem, and then thankfully I had his work to help me get out of it, but I again was left in the dust twice and had to dose myself at home, order my thyroid hormones over the internet, even though they're plentiful at all the pharmacies, because no one knew how to treat this problem. So through trial and error, thank God I did have to do that because now I have that personal experience and I really understand the problem and sort of all facets of hypothyroidism. But I live in Los Angeles. I had a PPO insurance plan. Like what? Like why did I lose 7 years of my 30s? Because all of these quote experts couldn't figure it out. And so what I really learned is that if you're afflicted with anything or you get a disease diagnosis, you better become the most expert that you can in that topic because you might be able to help your doctors help you or help yourself like I did. Now, I saved my own life without a doctor, that's for sure. But after that second bout, I was like, I'm never letting anyone go through this again. And so that's when I started to sort of just run into everybody with thyroid problems. And I was like, you know what? I got to do something about this. And I'm really glad I did because now doctors, I train doctors and people all over the world, and it's been translated into multiple languages. And that was really the goal. It was like, I don't care if I can just help one person, but I got to do this because otherwise these people are going to be lost and losing years of their life like me. So, and that happens with a lot of hypothyroid patients, as you can imagine, because they're going to uninformed doctors. People come to me, they're like, I've been struggling this for 10 years. Why?
Right. Yeah.
I went to the Cleveland Clinic. They didn't figure it out. The Cleveland Clinic didn't figure it out. The Mayo Clinic. I mean, these are some of the top institutions in our country where people flock to when they have a serious problem that can't be fixed. And yet these places are not even doing this topic justice. The other side of it, too, that's very sad about this is that it's one of the easiest problems and simplest, fastest issues to fix.
Well, let's get to that in just a moment. I want to go back to testing for a moment. Most endocrinologists stick to TSH and T4, and off you go. You advocate for fuller panels. You mentioned reverse T3. So talk a little bit about what you advocate for over what is generally recommended as far as thyroid testing.
Sure. So anyone listening or watching, if you're on thyroid hormone replacement and you don't feel amazing or you're struggling with weight or depression or any of these kind of things, you need to go back and look at your tests, and I'd be willing to bet you $1 million that your doctor only tested your TSH or your TSH and T4. And if that is the case, you are seriously with an uninformed doctor that's hurting you. So you need to learn this stuff. Okay, so that's for one. By the way, every time that happens and I do it, someone reaches out to me later and they're like, you know what, I went back to my labs and damn it, because again, we're throwing You have a thyroid problem. You need to take this pill. Okay, they know what they're talking about. They have an MD from Harvard. Who am I going to argue, right? And so you go about your life and then you don't feel well. You go back to the doctor. You're like, I'm depressed. I'm gaining weight. And they don't think it's your thyroid medication. They just go, oh, well, looks like, you're getting older, or now you've got this problem, or so, and they keep kind of patching you up, right? So testing wise, and, there are 6 main tests, like do I or do I not have a thyroid problem? I would start off with this 6. Now, there's some others that you could add to this that are thyroid related, but let's just talk about the basics. So, do I have a thyroid problem? Well, most of the thyroid problems are hypothyroidism, which is underactive. So I'm not giving you the test for hyperthyroidism, which is overactive. But if anyone is struggling with hyperthyroidism or Graves' disease, which is the autoimmune disorder that affects hyperthyroidism, just go to ellruss.com/Graves. And there is a 40-minute audio with an expert on that. That's not my area of expertise, but hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's is. So this is for hypothyroid patients. Like, do I have a problem? Well, TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3. And then you always want to rule out Hashimoto's. Do you or do you not have it? Now, most doctors only test one Hashimoto's antibody. They classically test the TPO, which stands for thyroid peroxidase. And there are 2 antibodies, and you can be positive for one or both. And so you have to rule out both. You have to get them tested. And so the second one is called thyroglobulin, TG. So we've got free T3, free T4, TSH, reverse T3, and then test TPO and TG. Now, when you do get tested for thyroid hormones, it's really best to get tested in the morning, 2 to 3 hours after waking up. Doesn't matter if you're on a late shift, like if you wake up at 10 a.m., that's fine. Still the same thing. And you want to be fasting. You can have black coffee, water, and tea. So it's not like a lipid panel where you have to maybe restrict that. And that is the best time of day to do it. And if you do take thyroid hormone replacement, you never take it before the test because you'll get a false elevated high.
Sure.
There's a little caveat there. If you are on T4 only, it will not matter as much, but anyone else on any other combinations would need to do that.
If you know you're going to test and you're on thyroid medication, should you step it out a little bit before, or just maybe not the morning of?
Well, just not the morning of. But here is the thing. Because doctors are uninformed and patients get educated, then what they do is they try to pull a move where if they have more than 1 dose a day, they'll say to themselves, I'm not going to take my afternoon dose because I know my doctor is going to freak out if so they'll try to trick their doctor so they can. Now that's sad because the doctor shouldn't freak out at what their labs are going to be, because I've seen the lab, they're totally fine. So, but there's no need to do that. You know what I mean? But you just want to skip it the morning before, because when we talk about free T3 and free T4, the free means what's free, unbound, and available, not what did I just send coursing through my veins because I swallowed it 2 hours earlier. And if you're taking anything with T3 in it, including natural desiccated thyroid, that T3, it has such a short, it's so immediate acting that it'll show up in your blood and then it'll look super high. And because it'll be peaking, and your doctor will be like, "Oh my God, you're on," and it's not. So you're just going to get false results, especially with an uninformed doctor. So yeah, don't take it before. And then when you get tested, those results, and I'll just tell you what the results should look like. If you're a normal human being in this world and you have no issues and you're doing great, everyone's thyroid results, and again, these averages and these ranges are arbitrary and they're based on a generally sick population. But when we look at the TSH, you are looking for somewhere in the middle of the range. All of them, you're kind of looking in the middle of the range. So for example, if a free T3 range is 2.0 to 4.0, a normal person will have 3.1. And that's anyone from like the athlete to your friend that's not on thyroid hormone replacement and has no symptoms. They will all show up classically the same. Okay, middle of the range. Yeah, your free T4, same thing. And then reverse T3, you want a little bit below the mid-range. Now, how do you know if you have a problem or don't? Well, if your free T3 is below the range, significantly so, you're definitely suffering. There's rarely anyone that's free T3 is at the bottom of the range and they're not super hypothyroid. The other one is that if your TSH is highly, highly elevated. So for example, the TS range is like 0.45 to 5. Okay, so it's just like 1 to 5, let's just say, to make it easy. Now, there are people that have come to me and have like 150 TSH. That's very obvious. But why we don't use the TSH and the T4 is that for a lot of reasons, and I can explain the feedback loop to you if you want. But the TSH is the signal sent from the brain to the thyroid that says, hey, please wake up because I sense that the blood is low in thyroid hormones. Okay. And so that TSH, when it's 150, I can almost guarantee that the T3 and the T4 will be at the bottom of the range or below the range. It means they got nothing. The brain is screaming, save her life, please, please, please. So 150, if I saw that TSH, I would already know likely that that T3 and that T4 are going to be down at the bottom. But some people you see, if your TSH is normal and your free T4 is normal in the range, your doctors are like, you're good to go. But here's the problem. There's really two thyroid hormones you need to think about, and that's T4 and T3. One is direct, T3, powerful, fast-acting, the thing that actually matters, the biologically active hormone, the thing that bodybuilders jam themselves before a competition with to burn as much fat as humanly possible. That's why hypothyroid patients get fat. They don't have enough T3, the fat-burning hormone. So, given all of that, when you're looking at the free T3 and the TSH being high, but you could have the T4 is not the direct. So T3 being powerful, immediate. T4 is a storage hormone. Its job is to build up, and when you need it, it will convert into the powerful thing. So if a doctor is only testing TSH and T4, then they are not actually seeing, is this person getting the package that should have been delivered by the T4? It's absolute insanity that no doctor would test the thing that matters. The free T3 test always corresponds with how you're feeling, usually. Okay. And so that's really the issue. So if you're just testing TSH and T4, you're testing a signal, well, fine, but it could also be normal. It was low in the range for me, and it'd be like, you're fine. You're fine. Doctor kept patting my gym shoes, just eat less and work out more. You know?
Yeah.
So when you're just testing the TSH, you're based in 1973 thinking. That's the year I was born. All right. If you're just testing TSH and T4, you're a classic uninformed endocrinologist, and you're only looking at those levels. So now here's the problem. The other problems that happen is that if you're just testing TSH and T4, and the person is complaining of symptoms, you don't, as that uninformed doctor, know to do anything but just give them more of that thing. So here comes reverse T3. The only thing that converts into reverse T3, and reverse T3 is an inactive, fail-safe sort of mechanism. Reverse T3 is there as an emergency brake. Like if you were on a stranded island and there was no food around and you started to, you're starving. Your body is naturally going to increase reverse T3. It doesn't want the T4 that your thyroid's producing to turn into any fat-burning T3 because you're starving and you're not getting nutrients. It's trying to save your life. Reverse T3 is an emergency brake. So if a classic and uninformed endocrinologist, not only not testing the thing that matters that the T4 they're giving or should be converting to, but they're also not saying, is this thing converting into the correct thing, or is it falsely converting into the wrong thing? And I had a very serious reverse T3 problem, and only T4 causes that. So, for example, if you were to test my blood tomorrow, and for the past 10 years or whatever, it'll show almost no T4. And any doctor, I could just walk down the street and hand it to a doctor, and they'd be like, oh my God, they wouldn't know what to do with it because they're uninformed. But what everyone needs to know is that T4 is useless unless it converts to the thing that matters. It's really not the thing you need per se. It's nice to have. We want it to work like this. We want everybody to have T4 and T3 if you're on thyroid hormone replacement. So I know that's a lot, and I'm happy to address anything within there, or if you want me to explain the thyroid feedback loop and the hormones. But the bottom line of this discussion is if your doctor has only been testing your TSH and T4, hence one of the success stories in my book, Kara, 2 miscarriages, tall, skinny, but then started to gain weight. She was training for a marathon using all the energy she had for that. And the doctor was just like, nope, this is what you need. And we went back. I said, look at your labs. And the past 8 years, for those 2 miscarriages, he only tested her TSH and T4. And she rolled up into a ball that day and sobbed her eyes out because at that point it was too late for her to have children. So this is the kind of stuff that happens. And don't let it happen to you.
Right. And so when you take that information and then you talk about treatment, let's say someone listens to this, gets their testing, and then they're like, okay, I've got these results now. It's already clear to me that my doctor isn't addressing T3, reverse T3, free T4. I mean, just the other tests that your doctor did not order for you. Do they then seek out a doctor that they know will review those tests and then seek treatment? I mean, how do you address treatment for those? And is there treatment for that in this country where you don't have to resort to getting your drugs from out of the country or doing your own, PhD pretty much like you did?
It depends. So, for example, like if you have a lot of money, doesn't really matter, right? You can fly anywhere, you can go see any doctor you want. But if you're hating it and you can't afford a telemedicine appointment with a functional medicine doctor or whatever, you do what you do, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so obviously, and that's terrible.
Yeah.
All right. So, what does someone do? First of all, if you're with an uninformed doctor, some in the United States, there are a few states on the East Coast, and a few states in general, that don't allow you to get your own blood tested. California, I live in California, and I can literally go online to private MD labs and like order whatever blood work I want and then get the results without a doctor. So that is
Mhm.
always available to everyone. And if you went to privatemdlabs.com/, Elle Russ, my panel is there. So if you live in a state where you can do it, you get it tested on your own. What people do with me, and it just depends on what avenue they're taking. So for example, like let's say my clients in Australia, well, I can't do anything or work with them with my medical group to prescribe to them. But what I can do is talk to them. So what they'll do is they'll call me and then like they'll go back and instruct their doctor and they're learning as they go. And a couple
Right.
times they may have to switch and it's a pain in the butt, but at least they have the accuracy of knowing what to do about it. So that's what people
Yeah.
use like clarity calls with me for, which are just 30-minute calls or quick thyroid lab reviews and audio analysis where I can just do that. And that's with me. But in general, if you've got an uninformed doctor, you really need to learn this so that you can advocate for yourself and your own treatment. And also, the form of treatment that you need. Look, not everybody needs to go on thyroid hormone replacement. And we can talk
Right.
about that in a minute about what those natural options are to exhaust first before you have to go on thyroid hormone replacement. So, well, the way that I work with people is in the USA and Canada, I can do telemedicine with a medical group and do that whole thing. If someone is out of the country, so I have lots of clients in foreign countries, and so they use calls with me to learn and figure out what to do. And so they might call me 1 month, get an initial opinion, go to their doctor, talk to them. Sometimes I leave voice messages for their doctor. Here's the thing that's interesting. Oddly enough, uninformed doctors, well, not oddly enough, but they do have a lot of ego. They don't really want to admit that they don't know
Yeah.
something. But then it's very funny because if I record an MP3 or something where my client records the call and I say, hey, I'm going to talk to your doctor for a minute now, and I lay it out for the doctor, they tend to be open to practicing medicine with the person a little bit because I
Yeah.
think there's part of them that's embarrassed that someone who's an MD knows more than them about the topic. And they
Right.
are a little bit maybe more open. And some just shut down because they're like, don't tell me, right? I
Yeah.
went to medical
Yeah.
school, right? So
Yeah.
that's how that works. But I
Yeah.
have a free thyroid guide that tells you like how to look at the tests. It comes with a video series that shows you like here's what normal tests look like. All of the stuff in detail that we've talked about. That's available to everybody at freethyroidguide.com. You need to learn as much as you can, or anyone could
Yeah.
clearly reach out to me for personal help and guidance on their specific issue. But if you're just leaving this in the hands of doctors, I mean, that's what happens. You go to this doctor, they don't know. You go to another doctor thinking they're probably going to know, and then they don't. And then you just keep going around, and time's going by, and
Yeah.
it's accelerated aging, and now more problems are coming up, and you're so hypothyroid. And so it's important to get educated. I mean, that is really
Right.
my main advocacy is teaching people about the disease, the issue that they have so that they have control to understand how to fix it. And I also have a thyroid course as well. So
Yeah. So let's talk about diet, lifestyle, supplements. In your experience, which lifestyle or dietary changes yield the highest leverage in thyroid and metabolic recovery? What have you seen, treatment aside, that works, that moves the needle?
well, we know for sure that grains, particularly gluten, ignites the TPO antibody, it ignites the Hashimoto's antibodies. So one of the first things that anyone can do immediately, naturally, when they realize that they have Hashimoto's is to literally just quit eating gluten. And the reason for that is just actually, it's interesting. It's molecular mimicry. The gluten mimics tissue in the thyroid. And so your immune system, which is making a mistake because you have Hashimoto's, sees it and starts to murder your thyroid gland. So it's going to do more murdering, meaning more, more antibodies, higher levels of antibodies, the more gluten you eat. And I can tell that when I talk to people with Hashimoto's, because they'll be like, ooh, I never saw that before. And you'll be like, hey, just be honest with me. Have you been eating a lot of gluten? And oftentimes they're like, yeah, I have. And you're like, all right, well, quit that first and see what happens, and it can come down. So gluten, number one for reducing antibodies. There are other methods too. There's a medication called low-dose naltrexone that helps with that. But do you need to go to something like that right away? No, just quit gluten. Like literally just quit gluten and test and maybe retest in 3 months and see how far did it go down. And if it's going down, keep going. You know what I mean? So gluten for sure. Now, the reason I wrote a book called The Paleo Thyroid Solution is that paleo is so much more than a list of foods. So even though paleo is no grains, beans, legumes, dairy, okay, like that's essentially the basics, it's not about the food list. It's about the way that the paradigm of paleo ancestral works is that it is the most advantageous for blood glucose and adrenal management. And those two things go hand in hand with thyroid. And without going into confusing everybody, but for example, if you have too high cortisol, too low cortisol, it makes it harder or easier for thyroid hormones to get to where they need to go. All right. So if you are a sugar burner, which is what most people are, which is kind of hypoglycemic. So how do you know if you're a sugar burner? Well, ask yourself, could you wake up in the morning and go 8, 10, 24 hours without food and not have a hangry meltdown or be exhausted and want to pass out? Most people would be like, oh my God, no, I could, because I'm fat adapted. And so part of entering into a paleo ancestral paradigm is to become fat adapted. And what does that mean? That means that you are primarily fueling your body and your brain more so on fat than you are carbs. We see what happens with carbs. Look at our country, right? The diabetes, HbA1c, all the GLP-1s, right? Those are all for people that have eaten themselves into type 2 diabetes. There's only one way to reverse type 2 diabetes. It's usually keto or something very low carb. So paleo is a I'd say high fat, moderate protein, low carb. You can make it moderate fat, moderate protein, low carb. But when we talk about paleo, it's not just the food list and the carbs, it's about effort and exercise. So being paleo would be in contradiction with you running 10 miles a day. So we're all about fat burning state and occasionally getting into the HIIT and the high intensity interval training. Most people though are in a sugar burner. So they're eating a bunch of carbs. Now they got to go to the gym. They got to sit on the bike and Peloton it out and sweat it out because now they've got to burn the carbs. But now they're hungry afterwards because they've just depleted. The whole point of paleo is like we keep the glucose is kept steady based on how you eat and the paradigm of that. And when you do that combined with the proper exercise for that strategy, for that diet, then you've got a winning combination and you don't even need to leave your wheelchair and you can lose 40 pounds. So it's really about sugar burner versus fat burner. You want to be a fat burner. Fat burning is more sustaining. We always use the example of glucose being like a bunch of kindle that you throw on a fire. It's going to burn really quick and there's going to be a ton of smoke or oxidative stress, right? And when you put an old oak log on that fire, it burns steady for a very long time, very minimal smoke. And that's what being on a paleo paradigm does for your body in a way. Less oxidative stress, but also more blood glucose and adrenal management. Here's why. When you're hypoglycemic and you're a sugar burner and you're having a meltdown on the plane, it's been 4 hours and you're like, oh my God, I need Pringles, right? And then you eat the Pringles and you're like, I feel better. Well, yeah, you also feel better when you're coming down from heroin and you take a little heroin. That doesn't mean that that's how you should eat, right? And so someone who's fat adapted could sustain a whole entire flight, getting off the airport, the whole thing, like a whole 10-hour day without eating. And that's the position you want to be in. And that's the position our hunter-gatherer ancestors were in too. Do you think that they hauled butt up a hill for the hell of it? No, they conserved their energy. They would have passed out at a certain point. It was like slow, steady pace, occasionally sprinting. And so we want to eat like them, but we want to move like them too. And so that's the missing piece I think a lot of people don't understand about paleo, is that it is also about that.
And then I guess the fiber would come from vegetable sources. Back to the exercise. So does that mean then that we would recommend more steady state aerobic exercise versus HIIT training? And then where does strength training come into that?
Strength training's totally whenever, right? That's not a
Yeah.
problem. It's really the cardio. It's people. So what you look at is there's a guy named Phil Maffetone. We just use his scale. He's been in the industry of like health and fitness forever. And if you just take 180 minus your age, okay?
Mhm.
Whatever that number is, you do not want to go above that in heart rate except for a couple days a week. Now, if you're an athlete, different story. Well, you've got a different program
Right.
than most of us, right? So
Right.
that means you are walking at a steady pace or doing things in that steady manner. It's not
Mhm.
trying, but see, most people have that, I gotta go sweat. If I'm not hiking up this hill fast, and that used to be me. I used to haul
Yeah.
ass up the hills in
Yeah.
California hiking. And
Me
then I learned
too.
all of this and I was like, what am I doing? And I was always
Yeah.
starving and exhausted afterwards as well.
Yeah.
And it felt weird at first to bring along the heart rate monitor and kind of slow down. It felt like, was this gonna work though?
Yeah.
Because we just have fast and painful and hard equals results. And the truth is when you switch your eating strategy and your diet,
Yeah.
then you can have a much easier workout
Right.
paradigm, and my hikes are more enjoyable.
Well, I think in general, Americans, the shift has gone to what do I do for that 1 hour when I'm in the gym or the 2 hours or whatever that I'm training, and then everything else goes out the window. That's one of the conversations I had with Kelly and Juliet Starrett. They're like, we have to start thinking again about what we're doing all day long, and those are the hours that matter. What you're doing. Are you sitting all day long? Are you doing any kind of functional, productive work for your body? So that's fascinating how that ties in also with thyroid health, also with diet and exercise. And so where do you think people waste energy kind of on low impact strategies?
I think they're
Doing the
wasting a
HIIT
lot of
one
time on
hour
the
a day
cardio
or
and they need to get into
yeah.
the weights. And as you get older, and I'm sure you can attest this, as you get to a
Hmm.
different level, as we like to say, as you like to say, um, cardio won't work.
Yeah.
It
It's the
doesn't.
weights.
It doesn't.
Well, because we lose our muscle mass.
Right, sarcopenia. But here's the other thing too.
Hmm.
So it's about organ reserve. And so here's the thing. You always hear about the old people breaking a hip and then dying in the hospital. They are not dying of the actual broken hip. They're dying of pneumonia. Why are they dying of pneumonia? Well, let's just go back to what happened. They're not in shape. They're not flexible. They haven't been challenging their muscles and bodies. So they trip in the middle of the night. They fall. They break their hip, right? Now they go to the hospital and they have not challenged their lungs enough to get it out, and now they've got
Right.
pneumonia and they die of it, right? So for example, lifting weights is challenging the bone to build. So for example, my mother, God bless her, 79, the love of my life, she has eaten broccoli every night. She is never drank or smoked. I mean, you couldn't wish for your mother to have a better diet than mine, but she never lifted weights and she's got osteoporosis. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how much calcium you take and all that stuff. If you are not challenging the thing to do the job, it won't grow, expand, and become ready for you
Right.
in your old age.
Right.
So it's
Right.
more important as you get older, and not because, yes, it is aesthetic. You cannot build an aesthetic without lifting weights past a certain age, but it's also about literal organ reserve and saving your life in certain events.
Absolutely. You talk a lot about confidence as medicine. Another part of your focus really is using confidence, self-confidence as a tool and a mindset for success. Um, how how do you see confidence as that tool? How do you make that shift or help people make that shift? Do improvements in confidence feed back into physiological healing?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I think they've done some studies on people healing and watching comedy, let's say, right? And the healing of that. So I don't know if they've done it on confidence other than you're probably going to find out your answer sooner on whatever's ailing you if you have confidence because you're not willing to take no. You're going to keep knocking down doors. You're going to say, hey, BS, I don't, or, to the doctor, whatever, you're going to advocate for yourself. It's hard to advocate for yourself when you're not confident. And when you're hypothyroid, you're almost inherently not confident. You, you don't have the neurotransmitters and everything to actually access happiness. That's why you get depressed when you're hypothyroid. So it's extra challenging. But what I will say about confidence is that, people always think they know what it means. They'll be like, oh, that guy's really confident. I'll be like, is he? Or is he just up there speaking on stage and he seems confident? Let's see how he talks to his girlfriend or is able to navigate a confrontation in life. I don't ever take someone's level of outward performance confidence as true confidence. Not even mine, right? I'm sitting here talking and everyone will go, well, she's confident. Yeah, well, but check my life too and see what's going on. So people misunderstand that. And then they think it's about bravado. There are people that they're not extroverts. They're not interested in going out there. And so they feel the word confidence is like, ugh. Some of the most confident people are the quietest freaking people in the room. You do not need to be me, right? To be confident in anything, in corporate world, in life. I would say if you have to publicly speak, different story. Well, you can learn that. That's performance confidence. And the biggest thing is people are like, what is confidence? And the truth is that it truly is just this. It is the sum of the thoughts you think and the actions you take. That's it. So the thoughts you think and the actions you take, you can change both of those. But most people go, I can't change the thoughts. I can't. What people don't understand is that you don't get confident and then do confident things. It's never fun. It's not going to be fun, but it builds on itself. It's like compounded interest. So the moment you take the move, you speak up about the raise, you draw the boundary, you do the thing that I don't want to break up with them or whatever the thing is. Once you do it, it's a little scary. It feels weird. The adrenaline's running. You've got a high heart rate, but then it gets easier afterwards every time from there on out. And it fuels itself because afterwards you feel like $1,000,000. So you have to start small, right? And so, look, I talk about the smallest. I knew someone had to start. I knew someone who had such crippling social anxiety as a kid. They're in their 50s now, that they had to hire a social coach to take them into like malls and areas to actually go just be able to even talk to people. Okay. Now, that's a really great idea because people who work at shops and stuff are naturally going to be nice and accommodating, right? So that was an interesting exercise. This person now you would never know ever was shy. You would never, in fact, the opposite, just going up and talking to people and everything. That most people aren't at ground zero like that. Right? Even if you are at ground zero, you can still do it. So most people aren't at ground zero. They just need to speak up a little bit. And for one person, it's not sending the steak back. And for the other person, it's finally asking for the promotion. And I'll tell a brief story because there's no amount of confidence examples that are like stupid, but this one seems like a dumb one, but I'm going to let you know why it's not. So one of my confident coaching clients, Barbara, and she's now a best-selling author, and she talks about this publicly all the time. When she was learning confidence at 56, she was worried about going to speak up to her hairdresser. Her hairdresser had cut the bottom of her hair, I guess, vertically or something instead of a straight blunt cut, just straight across. And she was like uncomfortable with speaking up and talking about it. And some people listening might go, oh, give me a break. It's a hairdresser. There's nothing too little here, though. So let me just tell you what that was about. Barbara, I said, well, let me ask you something. Oh, you've been to this hairdresser a long time? She goes, yeah, like 10 years. I go, great. I go, is there anything you guys talked about last time that you could bring up this time? Like, is her daughter getting married? Is someone graduating? She goes, oh, well, she did give me a conditioner and I really liked it. I said, great, let's put that aside. I said, here's what you're going to do. You need to go in there and it's going to be something like this. Like, let's say her name was Jenny, the hairdresser. It's like, oh, hey, Jenny, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love to do a blunt cut from now on. I know we've been doing the vertical cut. I'd love to try that. Oh, by the way, I love that conditioner you gave me last week. You see what I'm saying? Now, why did I do that? Because uncomfortable people who are shy or weird about confidence, you'll end up babbling, blah, like keep going. This doesn't have to be a confrontation, and people who lack confidence think every speak up has to be a confrontation. Now, imagine if Barbara went in there and she was like, so like, you've been cutting my hair this way and I don't really like it. You see the energy. She threw it away. Oh, hey, by the way, I'd love to try. And you know what happened? Perfect. The hairdresser goes, oh yeah, great. It might take a few times to really make it look right, but perfect. no issue, no nothing. Yet Barbara had been like, right, worried about offending her. Maybe she won't like me. I don't want to use my hairdresser. All of these internal things going on. And when you make something as simple as that, so then, of course, she built on that in her life. Now she's a #1 best-selling author and did a bikini competition at age 59.
That's amazing.
I mean,
That's
actually,
incredible.
anyone should go look her up. She wrote a book called Feel Great in 28. Her name is Barbara Diaz de Leon, and she's just really something else. But
That's incredible.
you can change this at any time in your
Yeah.
life. You don't have
Yeah.
to be mousy. And so
Yeah.
I use that example to say, don't feel dumb and bad if these are small things for you, but you
Yeah.
can build them and do a 180 in life like Barbara.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm putting two and two together now, or connecting the dots here just while we're talking, how empowered it must have made you feel to be able to kind of solve your own, solving for N of 1 in your own life with your own obstacles and challenges. And then how that became so confidence building for you. And as you wanted to share your wealth of knowledge and what you had experienced with your own health, then so too with your how to become confident as well. So
It's fun. It's fun because honestly, life is confidence. If you don't take these shots, it's never going to happen.
Right.
And also, no one cares more about you than you. No one's going to do it for you. No one's going to give you confidence. It is self-generated. I could guide you, but it's self-generated. And so, and once you have it, and look, there's been a lot of studies on confidence. They're more successful. They're happier. It makes sense if you're not taking things personally, or you're rarely offended, or all of these things in life, or you're confident, you're not comparing yourself to others, you're not jealous. Yeah, life's better because you're not in your head having these moments. Yeah.
So here on the Rest Factor, we are always curious about what's next for our guests. What projects or ideas are you diving into right now that keep you feeling aligned, energized, or creatively rested in your own life? What's next for Elle?
If you looked me up online, some people might be shocked to find out that, I started off in comedy, sketch comedy and improv. And I started off in technology, but then once my hands got injured, I had my voice and I was like, all right, this is what I got to do. So I still, even after this interview, I'm getting together with my old sketch comedy buddies and we're working on a series of sketches that we're filming. We're going to film and do that. So I'm still having fun with that. I believe you can be multifaceted. I understand when people say niche is rich, but also it's like if you've got things to give or expertise, or just go do it. And that feeds my creative soul a lot, is to joke around with my comedy buddies. Yeah.
That's awesome. So where can people learn more about Elle Russ?
Well, you can go to elleruss.com, and I have free videos. I have a free masterclass for confidence. It's a 90-minute video and it's free, and it comes with an interactive workbook. So if you want to get on the confidence train, that's free and ready for you. And then for thyroid as well, there's a free thyroid guide plus a video series as well. So I give a lot of really robust free information, but elleruss.com, and you can learn everything about me there and reach out if you need.
Amazing. Elle, thank you so much for joining us today on The Rest Factor. I love how we dove headfirst and deep dove into all things thyroid health, and then finished it with a cherry on top of talking about confidence and how it all ties in. Thank you so much for joining us. Information, inspiration, and opinions are my own and are not intended to be medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making any changes to your diet, exercise routine, medical treatment, or if you think you may have a sleep disorder. Conversations I have with subject matter experts are intended to continue our efforts to optimize your sleep for better health, more energy, and improved physical and cognitive performance.